I want us now to work on the login functionality so that when we enter these details here and click on sign in, we are directed to the main screen of the application. So for that, I'm going to, inside of this authentication, I'm going to go to data. I'm going to create a new file here, which I'm going to call auth repository. So this is class auth repository. We are going to have the property Firebase auth, and you are going to create a constructor that takes this.auth like that. So inside of this repository, we are going to create two methods. One method for signing the user, another one for creating a user. So let's start with sign in. So future of top void, sign in with email and password, required string email, and also required string password is going to be an async method. And inside here, we are going to await auth.signin with email and password, passing the email and the password. Okay. Again, now let us now create another method for creating a user with email and password. It's going to be a future of type void, create user with email and password. So to create a user, first of all, we are going to have a required string email, required string password. Also, we are going to require them to input their name. So in required string name, also required string blood group, also required string phone number, and also required string type. So this again is going to be an async method. So first of all, we want to create the user and get their ID, and then use the ID to save that data to Firebase Firestore. We are gonna get the credential. So final cred equals to auth.create user with email and password, passing the email and the password. Now with that, we are going to have the credential. Again, now we are going to create an app user to enable us to have an easier way to add that data to Firebase. So with that, I'm going to go to domain, and I'm going to create a new class, a new file, which I'm going to call app user. So class app user. So and now here we define all the properties of our user. Okay, now I have an app user. So going back to the auth repository, now we can use this app user. So app user equals to app user, and pass all these values. So for the user ID is the credential.user.user ID. And so since this is an asynchronous activity, we are going to await it here. So we're going to await so that we can eliminate that error here. .uid like that. Okay, now we want to save this data to Firestore. So final Firebase Firestore is equals to Firebase Firestore.instance. So now we can await Firebase Firestore.collection. So the collection that I want us to save this data is users.document is credential.user.uid, and then .set app user to mark to now save that data. All right, so now with that, we have a method to sign in a user, and we also have a method to create a user. So one other method that I want to create yet another method, and that method is to get the current user. There is this user class that is provided by Firebase. So, but I'm going to use a question mark here because it can be null. So user get current user, and this should return auth.current user like that. And finally, we are going to create a method for signing the user out. So future void sign out. I'm going to await auth.signout. Okay. Now I want us to create providers for some of these methods. So we are going to use the riverpod annotation. And first, I want us to provide the auth repository. So auth repository ref ref. So here we are going to return out the repository, and we are going to pass Firebase auth.instance like that. So before I do anything else, let me add the line out the repository.g.dat like that. And with that, let me run the build runner to create the file to solve the error. So let me first import this. Let me now run the build runner once again. It had given me an error because of not importing the Riverpod annotation package at the very top here. And with that, we have solved that error completely. So we also need to create one more method for getting the current user. So user, current user ref. So first we get the repository. So final out the repository equals to ref.watch out the repository provider. And then we can return out the repository dot current user. So with that, we are able to get the current user. So let me run the build runner once again. Sorry, I forgot to add the Riverpod annotation here. One more method that I'd like us to add, because we are going to need it anyway, is a method to load the user's information. So once we have signed in, we are going to be directed to the main screen, of course, but we want a way to load the user information from Firebase. And I suggest that we create a method now that is going to help us with that. Is going to be a stream of type app user. Let me call this method load user information. And since we are loading the information from Firebase, we are going to need to specify which user are we loading the information for. So we're going to pass the user ID there, and then we are going to return Firebase firestore.instance.collection. So the collection is users.doc, now the user ID, .snapshots.map doc snapshot, return app user.from map, and then pass doc snapshot.data. So with that, you are going to load the user information. So let us also create a provider for this method. Okay, again with that I can run the build runner once again, and that should create that provider successfully. So if we can open the repository.g.dat, we can see we have the repository provider there. You have the current user provider there, and you also have the load user information provider over here. Fantastic. Now I want us to create a controller. Let me open the controllers here, and I'm going to create a new file, which I'm going to call outController. So it's going to be a class outController. So this controller extends an async notifier of type void. So here we need to override this method, but for now we are not going to do anything at the moment. Let me just delete everything there. Let me create a method to sign the user. So future void sign in with email and password. So we are going to require string email and also going to require string password. So this is an async method. So if email.stream.is empty, so these are just a basic input validations here. We are not going to do something very complex. And also password.stream.is empty. We are going to change the state to an async error with the error message that says ensure all fields are filled, and the stack trace is just pass stack trace.current. So if our details are filled, we change the state to async loading like that, and then we say state is equals to await async value.guard ref.read. Here I'm going to pass the auth repository provider dot sign in with email and password, passing in the email and the password. We now need to create the method for creating the user with email and password. Okay, so let me just do that quickly. So here we perform some validations here. So else state we updated to const async loading. Also state equals to await async value.guard all ref.read out the repository provider dot create user with email and password, passing all that information like that. So with that, we have our methods to manage the state. If there are empty fields, it's going to validate, it's going to have a simple input validation there, and then it's going to update the state of our screens respectively. Now we can try to go to the sign-in screen and implement now the sign-in once the button has been clicked. Once the sign-in button has been clicked. Here is the sign-in button. The on tap is here. So first of all, I want us to extract the email. So the email is going to be email controller.text.toString, and also we can extract the password. So final password email equals to password controller.text.toString. Now, before we do that, I forgot something. Let's go to the auth controller. So what we need to do here is that we need to create a provider for this as well. So for that, here, instead of extending async notifier, what we can do is that we can extend auth controller like that, and then we are going to add the river pod annotation there, and then we are going to add the part. So part auth underscore controller g.duct like that. Now with that, let me run the build runner once again. So if I go to sign-in screen to ensure that we don't have an error at the moment, let me delete that for a moment. Now let's go to the terminal, and I'm going to run the build runner once again. So with that, the error has been eliminated. And if I go to the sign-in screen now inside this on tap method, we can now be able to call that method. So here I want to call the auth controller provider dot notifier dot sign in with email and password, and we pass that email and that password like that. So clicking on that, we do not see any of the errors that we specified. So to do that, what I want us to do is to create a simple extension method that is going to allow us to display any errors that we might get. Let's go to common widgets here, and I'm going to create a file which I'm going to call async value UI. And here I'm going to create an extension method that we are going to use. All right, now with this extension method, once we click on a button, it's going to show an alert dialog. As you can see, we have a dialog here that is going to give us information when something goes wrong, or maybe when a user tries to sign in without having these details input. Okay. Also, in case we get Firebase errors, we are going to display that error inside of this dialog that we are going to show. Okay. So once we have that, let's go to the sign in screen. And for that, inside the build method of our sign in screen, we can say dot listen sync value. Here we pass the provider we want to listen to. So it's auth controller provider. Here we get the previous state and the new state. And now here we use state dot show alert dialog on error, and we pass the context. So this is the method, this show alert dialog on error. This is what we have created in our async value UI. So this is the show alert dialog on error method. So another thing that we want to add is when we click on this sign in, we want to replace this with a loading indicator. And to do that, we want to listen to the state. So final state equals to ref.watch the auth controller provider. If this is loading, remember I told you that we are going to come back to this. Now in this is loading, remember I told you to put false. Now we don't want to hard code the value here. We want to get this value dynamically, and we can get the state dot is loading. So if state dot is loading, remember in the command button we said if the state dot was loading, we want to get the circular progress indicator. Okay, if not, we display the text of that particular button. So let me try to reload the app. So if I click on sign in, as you can see, we get the fields are not filled because we have not input anything. But if we try to sign in but we do not have an account, okay, if now I try to sign in, as you can see, it's loaded, and since we do not have an account, we get the error that we get from Firebase like that. So I want us to go to the registration page and try to register our user. So first, inside the sign in, we are going to copy these these lines of code here, and I'm going to open the registration screen. So inside the registration screen at the top, I'm going to copy those same lines here of code here, because we are going to do almost the same thing. And I'm going to import these files like that. Okay, so here inside the is loading, I'm going to replace that to state dot is loading like that. And inside the on tap, now we are going to perform the registration. And now with that, we can now call ref.read. We are going to add auth controller provider dot notifier dot create user with email and password. We are going to pass all that. For the blood group we set the selected blood group like that. And the type we pass the widget dot type to get the type that the user selected, that what they want to register as. Okay, so let me try to register, to now register myself here. So here I forgot to put a comma here. So with that, let me try to register. Let me click on register me now. So you can see it loads, and I'm directed to the main screen. So if I go to Firebase, let me go to authentication. So you can see I'm registered. And if I go to data, as you can see, I have now a user that has been registered with all the information. Cool. Also for the sign in, it's going to work as well because I had tested it before.